is NJ, your host on this channel, continuing our discussion on understanding the planetary presence in different houses of our astrological chart. In this video, we will try to understand the presence of different planets in the fifth house of your astrological chart. So friends, as you know this thing that fifth house, which is one of the auspicious trine house, that means the attributes connected with this house can be attained with lot of ease and lot of grace. No matter how much affliction you have in other houses or in other areas of your chart, with an empowered fifth house or even the ninth house, all those problems can be overcome with lot of ease and with the support of the divine grace. And definitely friends, the other significations as represented by the fifth house are, this house tells about your relationship with the children. All information pertaining to children we get to know from the fifth house. This house also tells about the prospects of art and creativity, specifically the creativity where your originality is involved. This house also tells about all sort of recreational activities, pleasurable activities, interest in love, romance, speculation, gain from investment. Fifth house also tells about your interest in spirituality, knowledge of mantra, interest in yoga, we see from the fifth house. And fifth house also tells about your mental faculties, your mental capabilities, how intelligent you are, the prospects of your memory, in short, what kind of mind runs this person. And friends, when we talk about the prospects of the celebrity status or your personal magnetism, the kind of attraction you have, the kind of charm you have, your desire to distinguish yourself unique and different in the world, your innate desire to be unique and you want everyone to follow you. So all those cravings are generally seen from the fifth house. Now friends, let's say for example, if you will place Sun over here. So in the original Kalpurush Kundli, fifth house belongs to Sun's Leo sign only. So Sun has a natural affinity with this house. So because of which, whether we talk about the prospects of excelling in the fields of art and creativity, interest in spirituality, I have seen many people with Sun as Atma Karaka, that they have strong faith and devotion towards Lord Shiva as well. So whether you talk about devotion, you talk about prospects of originality, creativity, like even if this person is going to take any decision, so the native's mental faculties are always be governed with this thought process of putting his self-image, his public image on pedestal. So there is going to be very least possibility that native is going to become a part or associate himself with those elements which could malign the public image of this native. And along with that friends, whether we talk about working for the government, because fifth house tells about your education as well. So you might undertake all those academics and all those courses which facilitate your career in the fields of working for the federal government or becoming self-employed. So all those prospects, the beauty of this placement is that even if you will find Sun to be dignified in the fifth house, so as this house also represents the past life merits, the karmic rewards, so that could also give you this hint that native in the past lifetime might have enjoyed good royalty, good power and authority as well. So from the perspective of excelling in the fields of art, creativity, fame prospects, good education, favors from the royal, from the rulers, from the politicians, from the government, from all of those perspectives, the placement of Sun in the fifth house can be seen as a very good sign. Moving ahead friends, now let's say for example, if you will find the presence of Moon in the fifth house. So definitely friends, for doing something in the realms of art, creativity, where you have to make use of your imagination, so you can do very good in all of those fields. Even this placement can be seen as very good, that it can actually make you very romantic, it can make you very creative, which we have already discussed. But the only concern over here is that native might always have this innate urge for the public attention, that native wants to be the center of attention, that native wants to be appreciated, to be acknowledged for all of his work. And like the way friends, I always say this thing, wheresoever Moon is placed in your chart, your emotions, your feelings, your subconsciousness is very strongly attached to that specific house. So for example, if you will find Moon to be dignified in this house, and if native doesn't have any dosha in the chart, so growing up and in future, native is definitely going to be very much attuned and very much attached towards his or her children. So from all of those perspectives, this placement of Moon in the 5th house can be seen as a very good sign. Like I will not be surprised if I will see your basic education and your career in the fields where there is a lot of travels are involved, where there is a lot of creativity is involved, working with children is involved, children poetry books, writing, all those things. So a lot many profession can come out of this placement of moon in the fifth house. But the good part over here is that, friends, see, this placement is definitely going to create a kind of difficulty where fifth house has a lot to do with the rationality, where your mental faculties and the emotions of moon can actually create a tug of war between your emotions and the rationality. But in the other fields which I just mentioned, for artistic creative ventures, for becoming very poetic and having that dreamy imaginative personality, from all of those perspectives, this placement can be seen as a very good sign. Moving ahead, friends. Now let's say, for example, if you will find the placement of Mars in your fifth house. So friends, as you know this thing that in the original Kalpurush Kundli, this is the house which belongs to Sun, with which Mars has got a very close affinity, a good friendly relationship. And fifth house also tells about your mental faculties. The only concern over here is that this can actually make native little bit impulsive. This could also make the native little bit aggressive. Now the good part is that it will all come down to that what is the zodiac sign which you will find over here, because planet just represents energy. Zodiac sign just tells about that how that energy is going to be manifesting, and house represents where it is going to be manifesting. So it all comes down to which zodiac sign you're going to find over here, because the thrust and the desires and the energy of Mars can go and take any direction. Friends, I forgot to mention this thing that when we talk about the signification of the fifth house, so you talk about any plane, you talk about psychic plane, you talk about material plane, you talk about sattva, you talk about rajas, you talk about tamas. This house has got potential for everything. The mere placement of Mars is going to tell about that so much energy is going in this house. So it all comes down to the overall alignment of the chart. It also comes down to the evolutionary level of the soul. Basis that the energy of Mars is going to take its course. So for example, if you will find a friendly sign placement like Sagittarius sign placed over here, you will find Leo sign placed over here, then definitely native is going to be very much dedicated, driven, protective instincts towards his children. Native is going to be very much adventurous, lot of interest in travel and recreational activity, in sports, and even in the matter of love and romance, native is definitely going to put his best foot forward. But for example, if you will find the presence of, like for example, along with Mars, Rahu is also conjunct over here, and the sign placement is also not very dignified, then native might get into the hedonistic lifestyle as well. Lot of energy put forth in gambling, in speculative investments. So that is how energy can manifest. So it all comes down to, friends, that native is going to make use of his energy for devotional purposes, for religious austerity, mantra recitation, for spirituality, or native is going to take any other route. But the beauty over here is that fifth house, which represents our mental faculties, our mental capabilities. So the beauty over here is that whatsoever native will put his aim for, whatsoever native strives for, native will definitely put his whole force, and native could also be very strong-willed and strong determination with the presence of Mars over here. Moving ahead, friends, now let's say for example, if we will find the presence of the Mercury over here in the fifth house, which can be seen as a very good sign. Whether you talk about being very strategic, strong memory, very strong intellectual personality, native might also score and do very good in his basic education, like up to the graduation studies. If you have to take into consideration lot of travels, lot of recreational activities, association in these activities, native might also be familiar with lot many languages as well. Native might also gain from speculation, from investments, all these kind of investments. So from all of those perspectives, whether your personality being very playful, like, because friends, fifth house has an affinity with mantras, fifth house has affinity with the children, and Mercury is a very jovial planet. Mercury is a very impressionable, very flexible planet. So like the way we see all those kind of cases where like you got married on time and you have like grown-up children, you have teenagers, and when you go on a vacation or picnic or any outdoor activity, you become like a young kid when you are with your children. So that is the kind of mindset, that is the kind of flexibility, that is the kind of agility and the learning capacity you will find with the presence of Mercury in the fifth house. Moving ahead, friends, Now let's say, for example, if we will find the presence of the planet Jupiter in the fifth house, which can be seen as a very good sign. So because friends, when we talk about fifth house, it has also to do with the speculation. Jupiter, which in itself is the significator of expansion, of lot many opportunities. Wheresoever Jupiter sits, whichever house Jupiter influences, it expands the prospects of that house. So that means lot many opportunity, good luck, interest in spirituality, in mantras. Native might also have a very charitable, very generous personality. And the good part over here is that when we talk about gaining the happiness on the account of children, so even those prospects can get validated and promised with this placement of Jupiter in the fifth house. Friends, try to understand this thing. Many times what happens is that, see, if your chart is denying any happiness on the account of children, so life might put you in a situation that due to some biological reasons, some medical reasons, or any XYZ reason, you were not able to have children. But many times, because today we live in a day and age where you can adopt children, you can fulfill any of your wish, no matter how bizarre it is or how eccentric it is. So now in those circumstances, what happens is that if I'm not here talking about only from the perspective of the childbirth is getting denied. I'm specifically talking about happiness getting denied on the account of children. So then these kind of scenarios and circumstances erupt that native went against the will, he adopted the child, and later on, because of the destructive tendency of the children, of the child, adopted child, he became the source of all the misery, all the pain, all the struggle which native has to endure. So all of those information we see from the fifth house, but the beauty over here is that with the presence of Jupiter in the fifth house, you can be assured that you will receive all sort of nourishment, all sort of happiness on the account of children. This can be seen as a very good placement. Moving ahead, friends. Now let's say, for example, if we will find the presence of the Venus over here in the fifth house, which can be seen as a very good sign. Whether you talk about having that charm, that personal magnetism in your personality, interest in artistic and creative ventures, you might have your profession in the fields of theater, films, or creative fields. And along with that, friends, like fifth house, which also tells about the recreational aspect as well. So native might have a very outgoing personality, very social personality. Native might also take interest in, making new connections. We talk about love and romance. And the beauty with the placement of Venus in the fifth house is that unless and until it is not getting afflicted by other planetary presence, many times the presence of Venus in the fifth house can be seen as a very good news, a very good sign of successful romantic relationship. Like all those people who meet someone in high school and they, get married and, they live happily ever after. So that kind of romance can be foreseen with the mere presence of Venus in the fifth house. And now, friends, like the way I already mentioned this thing, that fifth house has to do with our mental capabilities, our thinking process. So a strong grip and influence of Venus in your fifth house just tells about native is definitely going to have very pleasing, very diplomatic way of looking at things. His mental outlook is going to be like this rather than becoming very argumentative or becoming very confrontational. Moving ahead, friends. Now let's say, for example, if we will find the placement of Saturn in the fifth house. So friends, as you know this thing that when we talk about Saturn, so this placement can be seen as good only in this regard that it can give you strong memory, it can give you strong focus, strong perseverance, staying power in your academics, in any sort of competitive situation. And this placement can also be seen as good for any sort of research, any sort of long working hours or long studying hours. This placement of Saturn can be seen as very good conducive sign for that. But when we talk about from the perspective of how much happiness you are going to derive on the account of children, how much pleasurable your personality is going to be, because friends, when we talk about the only house out of all the houses which gives us kind of joy of life, so that generally comes from the fifth house. And Saturn is a very dry, is a very heavy, is a planet of karmic responsibilities, pressure of duties, melancholiness. So the presence of Saturn in the fifth house can be seen as a very good sign for accomplishing something very scholarly in nature, accomplishing something very respectable in the and honorable in the society. But when we talk about your personal happiness, whether on your own personality, whether on the account of your connections, happiness on the account of children. So there Saturn can bring its karma very heavily. So now friends, like the way I already mentioned this thing, that fifth house also tells about the karmic rewards or punishments which comes from the past life. Now what could be the better way of looking at this, that if you actually want to ruin someone, you want to destroy someone, the first enemy any person has his own mind, his own thinking pattern. So like the way we say this thing, that good deeds done in the past lifetime manifest in this lifetime in the form of a good mindset, a good thinking pattern. But let's say for example, if you have done the bad deeds or selfish, self-centered, those kind of deeds in the past lifetime, so that manifest in this lifetime in the form of a distorted, heavily afflicted fifth house, where not only native is going to have a very twisted way of thinking, of behaving, of expressing himself, and that is how he get punished because of his own nefarious deeds. And there is also a heavy karma which comes on the account of children as well. So again friends, those extreme situation only happen if Saturn is going to be heavily afflicted in over here, and other planets are also contributing in the same direction. But apart from that, the good, benevolent and benefic side of the presence of Saturn in the fifth house is that it can actually make you very mature, very visionary, strong perseverance, hardworking and scholarly personality can be foreseen with this placement of Saturn in the fifth house. Moving ahead friends, now let's say for example, if you will find the presence of the Rahu over here. So definitely friends, if you will find Rahu to be well placed, for example, basis the sign as well. Rahu does very good in Saturn signs, in Mercury signs, in Venusian signs. So it can actually make your thinking pattern, like it can actually make you very out of the box thinker, very innovative, always trying for new things, adventurous, very trendsetter. And along with that, because fifth house also has to do with our mindset, so on a positive side it can give you all these qualities, like a very genius, scientific way of looking at things. But if you will find Rahu to be afflicted, it can also give rise to lot many obsession and mental anxiety and restlessness as well. Now if you will find Ketu to be placed over here, so now friends, when we talk about Ketu's placement over here, it can actually make your mindset very critical. It can actually make you very perfectionist. But regarding the fifth house related matters, it can give you a very detached outlook. So now when we talk about, like, you got the children, but due to some reasons, like you were away from the work, or there could be any so reasons, so there is a distance relationship with the children which can get created with the mere presence of the Ketu over here. And friends, for example, if you will find that Jupiter is also not respecting the fifth house, Jupiter is not dignified in the chart, then it can create problems in the form of, denying the happiness on the account of children, very esoteric or mysterious problems around conceiving. So all those things can manifest. But the good part with the placement of Ketu in the fifth house is that it is definitely going to make your mindset very critical, very perfectionist, and it can actually give you very strong instinctive powers as well. Moving ahead friends, now let's say for example, if we will find the presence of Neptune over here. So friends, as Neptune also represents your imaginative talents, Neptune also represents your receptivity to higher dimensions, other dimensions. So the mere presence of Neptune in the fifth house can actually make you a very dramatic actor. It can give you interest in photography. You can also excel in lot many artistic creative fields as well, where you will be responsible for creating something completely original. Now friends, the vulnerable part over with this placement is that Neptune also generate lot of karmic ripples and karmic vibrations. So basis the dignity of Neptune over here and the house lord's dignity, it is going to give you this hint that what kind of relationship you are going to have with the living signification of the fifth house, which are your children, or if you are a teacher, your students. So how much you will be putting in effort and how much you will reap out of it, all of that give and take we get to know basis Neptune's placement over here in the fifth house. But definitely friends, your thinking pattern is definitely going to be instinct driven as well. Moving ahead friends, now let's say for example, if we will find the placement of Uranus over here. So definitely friends, as fifth house has to do with your thinking pattern, with the presence of Uranus in over here, it can actually give you very out of the box way of thinking. It can at times make you unpredictable as well. Now the beauty over here is that this can be seen as a very good sign for trying to carve a unique identity for yourself in the society. But again friends, strong extreme impulses is something where you have to protect yourself. And lastly friends, if you will find the placement of Pluto in the 5th house. So friends, as you know this thing that the innate nature of Pluto is of extremities. So definitely 5th house, which also tells about your mental capabilities. So this is definitely going to give someone a mindset which is very combative, which is like very confrontational. You might have strong endurance and fortitude as well. So it all comes down to how your energies are going to manifest. And friends, when we talk about outer planets, they get more power if they get conjunct with a similar vibrations governing inner planet. So for example, if you will find Pluto to be conjunct with either Mars or like Saturn or Rahu in the 5th house, then definitely strong karma is going to manifest in the form of your relationship with the living signification of the 5th house, which are your children. So the kind of relationship you will have with your children, the way the relationship will take its course, the way the kind of love you will nurture, or the kind of retribution you're going to face because of the heated energy over here, all of that will be determined basis Pluto's dignity in your 5th house. So that is something friends which I wanted to say as a part of my inputs for different planetary presence in the 5th house of your astrological chart. For further more updates and notifications on the divine science of Vedic astrology, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and like my Facebook page.